In this exercise, we're going to take a look at adding a custom pose to a simple furniture item. So this will be a static furniture item using the toolkit. So as always, we need to start from a clean scene. So general, new file. So file, new, general. This will just reset everything. Don't save. Make sure nothing is selected. Select none. And then what we want, view, sidebar. So this will give us the toolkit. So click on the tab, and what we want for this initially is the furniture tool. So click the heading to expand the options, and then click on create furniture. This drops in the basics. So this is a template, a simple rectangle or oblong, that's set to be the right height for a sitting avatar. We've also got a root that acts as the furniture root to which everything is going to be attached. So as this is a simple item, simple furniture item, all we need to do is add a sitting node set. So click on the button and it will add a set of nodes that correspond to where the avatar is going to sit. So we have the handle, which is the object that we see in IMVU. And we've got the catcher and picture nodes. These are our interactive nodes where the two avatars stand when they are interacting, shaking hands. And then we have the seat node that occupies the same position as the root node, but this is where the avatar is actually rooted. And they're all connected as a group. So when we're moving these, if we're moving the position of the seat relative to the handle and the catcher and picture, select the root node. If it's difficult to see in the 3D view because it occupies the same space as we just said, what we can do is go into the outliner and expand attachment root. And then we'll have the various elements of our seat. And what we can do is just click on any of these entries to highlight the selected item. So if you want to move the seat, click on Seat 01 Sitting. And then what we can do is, using the widgets, is move and rotate, don't scale, the position of our object. So if we just grab that and move it to one side, that will be the position the avatar is going to be placed when it loads by default for our custom pose that we'll create later. And that's literally all we need to do. So let's save this. So File, Save As, give it a name. Bit of a complicated name in this particular example. Save As. So that saved the file. And to get a functional furniture item from this, all we need to do is export. Click on the export button, and the toolkit will arrange all the objects and connect them as they should be for Studio. So click on the root, the button highlights, and then we can click export. We need to save the file before we export, otherwise the button won't be available. So once we've done that, we can export. So click on export and it'll export our project. So what we can do is just assemble this quickly in Studio just to check and test everything is set up the way that we expect it to be. So in Studio, we want to create a new project, and we want rooms and furniture as our item category. Furniture. And what we want is the empty furniture item. So select. That'll give us a preview. and then just click on the Derive button. So what we're doing is just setting up a basic product so we can test our simple furniture item. So there's the avatar. So import button, import FBX. We need to find our project, which will be pre-appended FURN, fern. So that's our file. So select, open. We'll go through the import process. So this is a preview of what's in the file. Click on Setup FBX. Don't need to change anything here. That's okay. That's okay. Mesh ID, that's okay because we are using the empty furniture file. Next, brought in our image. That's the default. And the default material. Next, view, no animation. So this is what's going to be brought in. Import. So there is our furniture item, and we should have, there is our offset seat node. So the toolkit assembles everything for us. So we know that works. So let's just save this. File, save as. Save. Right, so back to Blender. So to add a custom pose to a furniture item, we need to do two things. First, we need to rename the seat node and give it a custom append. So that's the dot sitting at the end there. So for that, we can either do it in Object Properties and the name field. So we've got seat01.sitting, or we can do it in the outliner. And so for that, all we need to do is double click. That highlights the entry for editing. Backspace, backspace, backspace to the period. And let's call this, we need to give it a custom name, and it needs to be uppercase for the first letter. So let's just call this Toolkit. Pose. So what this does is identify this seat node as a custom node that's going to use a custom pose. If it had been left at sitting, IMVU interprets that as a default seat pose, and the avatar will go into the default seat pose or sitting pose whenever that node is used. So this changes it to identify it as a custom pose or a custom seat node. So what we need to do is save this, file, save as, it's number 2, brackets 2. So that's the basic prep for a simple furniture item. What we then need to do is bring this into Blender again when we've got the animation tool active. That's the tool that we use to create poses. So we need to reset the project. So File, New, General. File, New, General. That'll clear the scene. Select None. Make sure nothing is selected for this to work. Toolkit, View, Sidebar. There's a toolkit. Click on the tab. And we want the animation tool this time. So click the heading and then click on Append Animation File. This drops in the avatar, the female by default, and this is what we use to make custom poses. Now to create a pose for the furniture item, we need to bring in the furniture item with the seat node that's going to act as our anchor point between the avatar and the furniture item. And for that, we use Append. So File, Append, File, Append. This will open up the browser. We need to browse to the location of the file, the furniture file that we just created. Toolkit, there it is, number 2. Because this is the one with the adjusted seat node. So double click. The .blend files act as zip archives, so we can browse into them. And what we want, so that just changes the display. So icons, basic info, detail. So icons, we want object folder. Double click. And then in here we have our custom seat node and our mesh. What we could do in the furniture file is rename this in the same way that we renamed the furniture node using the outliner. But for now this will do because it's a simple project. So that's what we want. So click Scale Cube Ref, that's the mesh, and then shift click Seat01 dot Toolkit Pose. So that's shift click to select both of them, and then click the Append button. Everything else up here is okay. Append. So this will bring in the furniture mesh so that we have our visual reference and the seat node that acts as the anchor point. So what we need to do now is use these two objects as our visual reference, our template or our visual aid, to which we will pose the avatar. So we do not move the avatar. That must remain fixed at all times at the origin point of the grid. So don't move the avatar. What we need to do is move our furniture object or the mesh and the root node. And we need to position the origin of the root node, so that's that little dot that we can see. We need to position that at the origin of the avatar, which is highlighted in this particular instance by the 3D cursor. So we need to do this manually, and it doesn't need to be exact, but it does need to be roughly approximate. And to do that, we just need to quickly drop into object mode. So we're in pose mode at the moment, which is why we can see all these special colored shapes. So drop into object mode, and then we can click, shift click our objects, use the widgets, not scale, so move, rotate, and just move them into position. So again, we're trying to align the origin point of the seat node to the origin of the avatar. So we're moving our references, our furniture reference objects. So that's all we need to do. That's about approximate. Once we've done that, select the avatar rig and go back into pose mode. If we don't do this switch, we can't select and move these furniture proxies because we're in a different mode. We're in pose mode. So select pose mode, and then we can create our pose. But before we do that, let's just save the file so we don't lose anything. So File, Save As. Let's call this number 3. Number 3. So all we need to do now is create a pose. So in essence, it doesn't really matter where the seat node is, because what we can do is pose the avatar relative to it and the furniture item. So in this example, let's do a simple use the tools again, so move and rotate. We don't use scale. So grab our bones or our controls, and let's just create a simple pose. Whoops. rotate. So all we're doing is creating a custom pose, selecting each of these control surfaces. So that's all these colored objects, these colored shapes. And we are positioning the avatar or positioning the bones so that we can create a pose for the avatar. So let's just create a simple off balance pose. And what we can also do is use the shortcut keys. So G, that grabs and moves, and R rotates. So let's go with that as our pose. What we need to do next, select all, and then click on the Add Key button. This will drop in a keyframe that locks in that pose for each of the control elements. So we've got a list of the bones that they represent, and this locks it in to all the bones of the avatar. What we could do before we actually start animating is activate the auto key, and that will automatically insert a keyframe every time we pose or move a bone. So we can do either or. We can pose the avatar and then click Add Key once we've got all our bones selected and it drops in all the keyframe markers, or enable auto key before we do anything, and that will automatically place the markers for us. So that'll be our pose. So all we need to do now is File, Save As, number 4, Save as. And then as this is a static pose, it won't move. We need to enable make pose and export all bones. So click, click, just save this again so we have those properties saved to the file. Just save over the one we just created. And then all we need to do is click on the export button. So click on that. Blender and the toolkit will do its thing. It'll add in this sequence and it'll export an FBX for us. Before we assemble this in Studio, let's go back to the furniture file, double check, number 2, that we exported this. So click on the root node and just export. That'll export our furniture item, and then what we can do is assemble this in Studio. So in IMVU Studio we need to create a new project, search rooms and furniture, and then furniture, and then we want to select the empty furniture item. So click, there's a preview, then derive. Now we can load in the 2 FBX files. So import FBX, and we can load either or in first, it doesn't really matter. So fern_toolkit, that's the one that we want. Open. This will give us a preview of what's in the file. Set up FBX. Everything is okay here, don't need to change anything. Next, it's brought in the material and the texture. Next, review, that's what it's going to bring in, and then import. So that is the basic furniture item, and there is the custom seat node that is using the default at the moment. So what we need to do next is import the seat pose FBX file. So import FBX. This time we want the anim_toolkit file. So select, open, that's a preview again of what's in the file. Set up FBX. Everything is okay here. Next. No materials. Next, there is our animation. Review, that's what it's going to bring in, and then import. And all we need to do is just assemble the components. So go into component, and we need to set up the furniture item. So skeleton, asset, we want to change the root node to the furniture item. So that's going to be root node _attachment root. Preview. That sets the skeleton or resets the skeleton for the furniture item. Then we want action. Create new action. And this should be named, the trigger is going to be the name of the seat node. So stance dot and then toolkit pose. Leave action type blank or on the default so it's empty. Click on the ensemble to add one, and we should have in the assets section animation. So select from the list, change the duration, so that's frame 1 to frame 2 because this is a static pose. We want this to play infinitely, so set that to 0, that's loop. Everything else is okay. Click apply, and then preview, and there is our pose, our custom pose on our custom furniture item. And all we need to do is save, file, save as, Toolkit custom pose, save, and then in the info tab we fill in the correct details and then submit to the catalogue. But that is our custom pose on a custom furniture item using the toolkit.